Well, good morning again. Today we are talking about don't let your thoughts drive, they're not licensed. And this idea came to me of, which is a funny, Jesus take the wheel, and how we give so much credence, myself included, to thoughts. So the thoughts come, the body reacts, the mouth opens, and out comes the words, and quicker than a millisecond. And then we spend, I don't know about you, but I spend the rest of the day ruminating. Did I do that right? Should I have said it differently? Could I have been kinder? Could I have been nicer? And then, oddly enough, Lucas started saying, "Mommy, are you nice right now?" I'm like, I'm always nice. Oh, not when we all have to get in the car and I don't follow instructions. Out of the mouths of babes. We all have these thoughts, and we all ruminate, and we all have conditioning. We've talked about this many times. We all have lives that we've lived, and pain and suffering, and highest of highs and lowest of lows. And last week we talked about the articulating system, the activating the articulating system and asking why. And I always like to come back with evidence. So I went to daycare. So on the way to daycare, I always say with the kids, why am I amazing? And they'll repeat it. And I'll say to Esty, why am I confident? And she'll say, confident. So if you ask her today, she'll tell you the word confident. She's not even 2 yet. I'm like, very good. And so why do all my friends like me? Why am I always supported? And we do this in this, toddler kind of way. And I get to this Thursday. I go to, Thursday morning we wake up and Luke says, I don't want to go to school today. And I go, why? And he goes, because I don't want to go on a date. And I go, a date? You're 4. You're not allowed to date. And he goes, Charlotte wants to take me on a date, and she kissed me on the playground, Mommy, and now I don't want to go to school. And I was like, oh, my God, help me. He's 4. But when I got to school, I said to Charlotte, I go, no dating, no kissing on the playground. You're 4. And she goes, I can if I want to. And I'm like, you're right, but not my kid, okay? So at the end of the day, I go back and I pick him up, and I go to get Luke, and he's like, Mommy, you're here, which is always the best feeling in the world. And all these kids run up, and I usually give all the kids hugs, and this one little boy goes, I didn't get my hug. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. No, not you, Luke. And 8 kids come rushing in, and they're all in this huddle around Luke going, we love you, hugs, hugs, hugs. And I go, I'm always supported. All my friends love me. I am confident. And then Luke goes, do we have to say that on the way to this? These are my kids, right? Mommy, it works. But I don't want all those. So I'm telling you, it works. And it works so much easier for kids because they don't have all the hang-ups that we have. They don't have all the questions and answer and the recall of the mind. And so I just thought I'd share that with you, that it does work out of the mouths of babes. And I'm sure I'm recanting it in a it was funny and fun. And although I do not like my 4-year-old kissed on the playground, I'll just say that, okay? But let's go ahead and get started with our talk. So for me personally, there was a time in my life where every thought felt like a command. And every time the thoughts would ruminate, it was overwhelming, and my body would go into reaction. So if a thought said, this is going to go wrong, I believed it. If a thought said, oh, they must be upset with you, I reacted. If a thought whispered, something bad is coming, I prepared for the worst. Thoughts drove my life. They drove my emotions, my relationships, my self-esteem, my decisions, even my peace. And then I found signs of mine. And something profound shifted. Not all at once, really, really slow. And through the practice of self-awareness, I discovered that thoughts arise through self-awareness. I discovered that they do not have any authority, that they are not licensed to drive this vehicle, that there is a part of me, the self, is the driver and the author, and the one who decides and the one who gets the keys. So Ernest Holmes says that we are not our thoughts. We are the ones who think. And we know this quote, that life is a mirror and will reflect back to us what we think into it. And it is the same process, that when something in the present feels like the past, the amygdala, that part of our brain, reacts. And before the thinking mind can even begin to process, your breath tightens, your chest contracts, your heart speeds up, adrenaline is released, your nervous system goes askew, and the fear-based thoughts appear. All of that happens in less than a millisecond. And they want us to become aware of it. Typically, we do not become aware that the unlicensed driver is driving our car until something happens. But the body always reacts first. This is our first sign. Then the story appears. This is the second sign. And not every thought is worthy of the steering wheel of our vehicle. So the 3 points of the talk today are: thoughts are passengers, not the driver. The higher self is the only licensed driver. And we don't really choose, we align. So thoughts are the passengers. Thoughts arise from our old beliefs, from our conditioning. We can't really react to anything that we don't know or haven't heard of. It would appear new to us. So if you've ever had somebody come and share something with you and you go, oh my God, I never heard of that before, you most likely would react in a surprised manner, inquisitive and curious, where you'd want to bring it in and learn more about it. But if it triggers an old thought or conditioning or pattern, and that conditioning pattern was perceived to be negative or impacted you in the past, then the reaction is probably going to be a little more difficult to process. And then we start to see who's actually driving the bus. In the meditation this morning, I talked about how the rain has come in. But the rain comes and it goes. And this is the nature of thoughts. And we don't really understand or start to see this nature. In the beginning anyway, when I started with Science of Mind, I would sit and, in my meditation and try to watch the thoughts, try to become of the thoughts. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many of them. I can't watch them. They're like zing, 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 zing. And then they eventually be like, why are you doing this? This is useless. Why don't you get up? You got things to do. Are you going to sit here all day? And you just start to notice the pattern of these thoughts, and they become consuming. And then the nervous system reacts, and you think, God, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to go anywhere. What? You know what? and I remember when I was going through practitioner class, and my teacher said, no way back now. And you realize at some point along the spiritual path that we're traversing, you think, man, some days I think my life was better in the ignorance of not being spiritual or not really taking full responsibility for my life. And then you remember all the chaos and suffering, and you're like, nope. So you go back to the drawing board. And in Ageless Wisdom, a friend of mine, Gita, she says, once the spiritual sun shines on your face, you can never escape it. You can try to put it to sleep, but you can never escape it. So there is a natural growth and path to the unfoldment of becoming aware of our thoughts. Now, thoughts are there, and they're not all ours. This is what we talk about, the race consciousness. The ones that we typically own are the ones that directly impact us or hit that trigger. And when that trigger's hit, we react with sadness, fear, shame, blame, sometimes even joy. It's not all negative, but the joyful ones aren't really the ones that we need to work on, because those are the ones we want more of. And how do we get more of them is by observing the ones that are deeply impactful to us. And we let go of trying to stop them and start just paying attention to the temporary how temporary they are, and that the feeling even is temporary. And I was given instruction in my life to never speak when I'm emotional or triggered. And I sometimes think I'm doing a really good job of that. I can even talk myself into the idea that I'm not triggered. Because I can now calm myself down pretty quickly, but there are different triggers, and when you are still trying to solve the problem, when you are still having the conversation with the other person and they're not in the car with you, when you are still ruminating about who is right and who is wrong, you can be emotionally calm and still triggered. So once we start to identify when we are completely safe, when we are completely feeling the embodiment of the higher self, when joy starts to enter the picture, and we then use our skills to have conversation if it's needed with yourself or others, where we use our skills to write the letter, we start to engage in ways, classes, education, but we start to engage in ways that allow us to escape the othering and the righting and wronging and the theming and using. And we really go into this with the ego or the personality calmed down, and we enter into conversations or whatever the case may be. We enter into it in a peaceful state, the peace that we already are, and we start to notice that those conversations yield so much more satisfaction in ensuring that both parties are listened to. Or, most of our struggles come from conversation, or difficult conversations or disagreements with the people that are in front of us. So I often talk about those things because I have found 99% of the time when people come to me, it's either health or relationships that they're looking to resolve or solve. And the resolution and the solving is always within us. Now, it's important to understand boundaries. I wasn't raised with them, or very good ones, I should say. So I'm not a really good boundary setter. And sometimes when I'm trying to set a boundary, I can come off as kind of gruff. And I can feel the protection mode kicking in. And I have to remind myself that I'm safe and both parties deserve to be heard. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to get what they want. But everybody feels heard. And this is the other thing that I've learned. When the ego is in the driver's seat and is trying to take a hold of the wheel, it has a me mentality. Me want to win. Me want to be heard. Me wants it my way. Me, 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 me. That's how you can tell who is driving your car. If there's any sign of me and not we, there's a little bit more work to do. So thoughts arise from old beliefs, past wounds, conditionings, fear responses, habits, loops, survival instincts, collective memory, and the nervous system. Holmes says the mind must learn to listen to the soul. So often we are listening, we don't recognize that the personality is here to be used. The personality wants to use God to get what it wants, right? It wants to use God to get the house, to get the car, to use the law of attraction. It wants to use God, but very rarely does it want to surrender. Very rarely does it want to say, I don't know. Very rarely does it just, its job is to be continually thinking. Its job is to be continually ruminating. I read this book, this beautiful book by Howard Falco called I Am. Great book. It describes the ego and its purpose. And he, what I remember of the book is like the ego shows up as the superhero. I'm here to keep you safe and save the day, right? And it will always, because it's his job. So when we are going about healing, trying to stop the mind from driving the bus, trying to stop the thoughts from coming, trying to be better, be more perfect, be nicer, be kinder, that we miss the point because we are already peace. We are all already love. We are already that which we seek. But its little trick is to make you think that it's absent of you or outside of you. And we are continually looking for it from other people, like there is some mystery out there that we don't have that we need to go and seek. And the truth is, at the end of the day, all teaching must cease. All teaching must cease. All seeking ceases. And what happens is the truth or the realization that liberates us and sets us free, like Aaron read, is already present. It isn't something that you have to go find. It isn't in a book. The book is the pointer. The teachings are the pointer. There are so many of them because each of us have a different resonance, a different understanding, a different love that makes us feel safe based on the way that you were raised. I am very inclined to Jesus and to, when I was raised, my mom, we would watch the black and white movies on TV of lords and different saints and how they would appear and heal people, and I found great, when I was young and a very nervous child, I found great comfort in wearing my little Mary Magdalene pin to my spelling test, because it helped me build my faith that there was nothing wrong with me and that I could get those words. And one time when I was in the 3rd grade, I wore my little pin that my mom had brought home from Lourdes, and I was feeling very confident. It gave me a sense of confidence. Our teachings boost our confidence. It points us in the right direction. It starts to help us process mental, emotional, physical, right thinking, right action, right movement. It helps us find our way. And in that little pin, I remember coming home in the 3rd grade, and the pin fell off, and it fell into a crack in the ground. And I was so devastated because I thought all my worth was tied up in that little pin and that I would fail the next spelling test. And my mom would get mad at me, and my teacher would think I was dumb. And I remember out there with the stick trying to dig out this metal in I vividly remember my just crying, and my mom coming out and going, "What are you doing?" And I go, "I need my pen because I have a spelling test next week and I won't pass it if I don't have the pen." And my mother looks at me and she goes, "I gave you the pen for confidence, not reliability, not reliance. You already have the confidence. You've already proven to yourself you can do it." So the teacher's much like a map. The map will point you to France, but it will not get you there. The driver of your bus is your highest and utmost self. It is always driving the wheel of the car, of your body. The illusion is that there are thoughts and choice, and that we perceive that we know a better way. It's very hard for us to surrender and let go. That 3rd grader is still inside of me somewhere, so it likes the deity, the ritual. It makes my nervous system feel safe so that I can let down enough to allow myself to look at my faith, to allow myself to see the world as it is and not as I think it is. Someone said something to me about what they thought someone else thought, and I really processed this all week, and I thought to myself, there's a part of us that does think things about other people, but that's the thing. Change your thinking, change your life. That we often think, and the thinking can be deceiving because it's not actually what's going on unless we take the time to ask and allow the person to tell. And in the end of the day, there are some people that are not kind and that we do want to separate ourselves from, but simply allowing the mind to go, I hear my mind ape crazy. Allowing the mind to go crazy does us no benefit. It makes us more nervous. It makes our nervous system dysregulated. It doesn't allow us to process the teaching in the right way. And so this is where surrender enters. The higher self is the only licensed driver. The higher self, the I am, is the only clear, calm, loving part of you capable of leading your life. Holmes says, there's a power within us, a power that can heal, guide, direct, and we must listen to it. And the key is we can't hear it if the thoughts are driving our car. The key is that we can't listen or intuit the wisdom that is already there, the truth that is always already there when we have the overlay of thinking. I think they're mad. I think I screwed up. I think I should have been there. I think I'm late. And every thinking thought that is a nervous tendency covers that higher truth up. And it actually inhibits our brain from processing information that is given to us from the higher realms. How do we know? The higher self whispers, thoughts shout. You breathe and you say, Spirit, you drive, I will follow. The third point is we don't really choose, we align. Most choice is simply conditioned reaction. Isn't that interesting? I read about this, that most choice is just a reaction. And unless we become completely aware, we cannot even recognize that we're acting from an old pattern. We might say after the fact, oh my God, I did it again. Or God, somebody might say to you, you always act that way. Or, you think you've grown and someone go, and you'll go, God, I don't want to do that anymore. And they might go, but you do. If you have a friend like I do, that always helps me to stay on the track in the most loving way. But I spent some time, I'm spending a lot of time with my mom. And recently my dad's health has been failing as well. And I went there yesterday. My mom wanted to go and check on my dad, and Bill took them. And yesterday I went to pick my mom up. And when I walked in, I was like, oh boy. And these two people talking, and I'm just witnessing this, and this tears just started to pour out. And my mom's like, what are you crying for? And I go, I don't know. But my daddy, he's not doing well. And it's hard to see this pillar of strength in my life that needs help and support. And then they're like bickering back and forth, and I recognize myself in this realm, and I start to see how I was conditioned. I start to see my responses sometimes to Bill. I start to see, and then once I saw it, you can't unsee it. Then when I got home, something was on the counter. I don't know. It was a mess because my house is a mess with kids and mom, and I've given up on judging myself about having this perfectly model home these days. And I saw it sitting on the counter, and I'm like, oh, God, did he do it again? And he goes, I didn't see him standing behind me. He goes, do what again? And I go, oh, there it is. Nothing. I was wrong. You didn't do anything. And I totally recognize that some of these things come out of my mouth in a very conditioned. I don't choose to say it. My conditioning says it. I don't choose to be it. My conditioning does it. Now, it doesn't excuse us from the responsibility of settling our nervous system down, and before we open our mouth, beginning to start to see this and become aware of it. But the driver of the bus not only is the ruminating thoughts, but it is the action and reaction we take towards people that sometimes can be perceived as unkind, depending on how you were raised. And I started to see in this relationship in their old age how I was raised, that it has always been there, that they have always communicated this way. My mom, healing, my dad calls and goes, bring me some chicken from Fry's. And I'm like, how are you planning on getting that, Mom? Oh, Bill can stop at Fry's and get the chicken. And so they stop and get the chicken, and then my mom scooches over puts some chicken on the plate for my dad, and then brings it over to him, and then he sits down and he goes, Lorraine, I said 2 pieces of chicken, not 1. And my husband's telling me the story, and I was like, yep, that sounds like my childhood. Now, it's because of the way they were raised. And I said to my mom, I go, he doesn't seem to be very kind. And then my mother starts to defend him. And I go, you got to be kidding me right now. And I just kind of laughed. And I tell you this story because we're all human. We all have thoughts and we all have families. And to see how you were conditioned and raised without an overlay of judgment, or I think what came up was sorrow and a lot of tears of release going, oh, well, you are exactly who you raised to be. You can let it go now. There's a divine perfection about you and about them. And we are always moving and having our personality within our own conditioned roles. Your thoughts are always driving the bus. But when you start to look at the map, you start to study the teaching, you start to become aware, you start to recognize there's a different way to do it. And you start to breathe when you know you're going into stressful situations. You start to become more skilled at conversations. You start to think before you open your mouth. You start to be kind to yourself. Because the reality is, everything that's going on around you that you notice is really happening within you. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice it. That it's the war within that the teaching is healing and revealing. And when the war within is healed and revealed, and we start to recognize the nature of the personality and the mind, and we realize it's not us, we just let it happen. And we sit in the house of the Father. We allow the world. I love the quote, I and my Father are one, and I dwell in the house of my Father. I live in the world, but not of it. These things bring me great relief when I don't know where to go, and I don't know how to move, and I don't know what to do, and I have a lot of fear and nervous anxiety. And repeating those mantras just has this tendency to settle me down, and this sense of surrender comes over me. The voice in my mind slows down, and the peace starts to reveal itself. And then a recognition is I don't have to do anything. The only thing that I may have to do is if I need to offer an apology, I will. If I need to accept responsibility, I will. And sometimes that's to other people, and sometimes it's to ourselves. And that's the beauty of understanding the unlicensed driver. As a final affirmation, I will share with you, that I am the awareness behind the thought. I release unlicensed thoughts from driving my life. I give to the surrender to know that everything is perfectly divine and aligned. No matter what is going on, I am safe. May the road rise up to meet you. May clarity guide your actions. May peace be your navigator. May your heart remain open. May you always remember, Spirit alone is licensed to drive your life, and it is always doing so, and so it is.